Fran, can you hear him?
Good afternoon, members of the Arkansas American Rescue Plan Steering Committee, guests, and members of the press. Seeing a quorum, I hereby call the meeting of the Arkansas American Rescue Plan Steering Committee to order. The first item on our agenda is the approval of the minutes from the May the 19th, 2021 meeting. Those minutes were distributed to you via email earlier. Do we have any corrections or additions to those minutes?
Motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. The next item on the agenda are the proposed rules that we have developed using as a guide the rules that we had for the CARES Steering Committee. What we did is basically have the same rules that will be used and applied to the American Rescue Plan. I have submitted them to you in advance. I don't know if you have any questions or comments about those, or if you feel like you need any additional time to review them. If you do, we can wait until our next meeting, or we can go ahead and approve them at this time. I'm open to either one of those alternatives.
Chairman, I think you did an excellent job on the rules. I have no questions.
Thank you. Would I have a motion to accept those rules?
I would move. Second.
Any questions, comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, very good, thank you. The next item on the agenda is, the main reason that we are here today, and that is to hear a proposal from the Department of Commerce concerning the proposed rollout plan for the AARP funding of the state broadband grants. We have a memo that was prepared by Judge Stephen Porch, legal counsel, chief legal counsel and executive broadband manager for the Department of Commerce. It was provided to you. I think it was modified slightly today, so hopefully you have the most recent version. What you do if you have it, we put it on on your desk. So what I'd like to do now is turn the meeting over to Secretary Preston, who will describe what they're asking for, how much, and we'll entertain any questions or comments as, I guess, now why don't you make your presentation and we'll come back with questions.
Okay. Well, and I'll be fairly short and brief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity to present today, and to the members for getting together to hear our proposal. First, I just want to rewind and look back at the CARES money, the funds we used last time around. This was certainly a priority then. It still remains a priority. What we learned through that first round of funding is that we have a huge broadband deficiency in the state. I don't think that's a surprise to anyone in this room or anyone watching. But I do feel we were very successful in our last round of funding. $120 million is what was utilized from the CARES funding. Those funds were deployed in less than a year's time, and that brought access to 130,000 Arkansans who did not have broadband before. So 130,000 people in our state who previously did not have access now have access to broadband because of the work that the CARES Steering Committee did, and through the Office of Broadband and the Department of Commerce were able to do that.
How much was it?
What we did in that process, though, was we continued to take applications. So we only had 120 million. We had to shut it off after that, but we continued to bring in applications. So therefore, we have a demonstrated need. The information you have provided in front of you is where we currently stand. About $30.7 million. If we had funds tomorrow, we could go ahead and get funding flowing. Obviously, we'd make some rule changes, and I'll let Judge Porch talk about that to reflect the current American Rescue Plan stipulation. But $30.7 million in awards that will be ready to go. Additionally, we have about $114.7 million that with some modifications we could fit to tailor in the American Rescue Plan. They would have fit in the previous round of CARES, but because of the change in the federal guidance, these will need some additional work, so we'll work with them. So you're looking at roughly $150 million in projects that are essentially ready to go with some minor tweaks on those other ones. We anticipate receiving another approximately $150 million in requests based on the need that we've seen out there demonstrated in the last year and the further that we have to go to deploy broadband. Therefore, we come to you today with a request for $300 million to support the Arkansas Rural Connect program to continue to push out broadband throughout the state. So with that, let me pause and introduce Judge Stephen Porch, who is, Chairman Walter said, is our Chief Legal Counsel and also wears a dual hat as our Executive Broadband Manager. Stephen and his team have worked diligently on this, and really commend him for all the work they put into it. Stephen, what did I leave out?
No, I think you've answered it quite accurately, Mr. Secretary. Basically, the memo kind of speaks for itself. Forgive me, I ran up the stairs, and that's not listening to me, or is it? But the memo, I laid it out pretty plainly about what we want to do. I'll be so welcome to any questions that anyone has that you would like me to address.
I'd like to start with one question. I've got two or three questions. One of the criteria is the upstream, downstream bandwidth, and I believe you addressed part of it. There's like 37 ISPs. No, that's not it. Where you talk about the need to make sure that those are adjusted or changed so that you get that speed that's appropriate for the American Rescue Plan. Is that going to be doable, and will we be able to provide the bandwidth that's been requested?
The answer to your question, Mr. Chairman, is yes with those projects that we talk about. Those projects are fiber, so that optic fiber will allow that to happen. However, what I've noticed in my evaluation, and I had a map drawn out today, probably about 30 minutes before I got here, just to take a look at that. The backhaul is going to be the issue on it because we don't have that many that supply that type of speed here. So that's going to be a change, and that's going to be an expensive change that's going to take. That's part of the reason why I said that we should easily be able to receive 150 million worth of projects because of that small detail.
Thank you. Questions, please?
Can you give us a little bit more information on the problems that you have making these 114 million compliant?
Well, we want to make, as I explained with the chairman, the backhaul is going to be the issue of it. They're going to have to update their equipment as well, and so we want to give them the opportunity to do it. As long as they're using optic fiber, they have the capability of doing that. But you want to make sure that the backhaul is good. If the backhaul isn't good, it doesn't matter about the rest. So they're going to have to really change the core function of their system in order to meet the needs that are required under this new federal guidance.
And Senator, one of the issues with doing that is that the change in the federal guidance did not allow for fixed wireless. So some of these are fixed wireless projects that we're trying to get some more guidance and clearance from.
My other question is, I've noticed that on this is all fiber and everything. Where are we at on getting wireless internet? Because in my area, wireless internet is probably the most feasible of all because of the terrain. So, and as you well know, as the meetings that we've had, I still get calls from the wireless people saying, I can't get my grants approved.
And that is an issue. What we're doing now, I know that the governor is issuing a letter to the Undersecretary of Treasury to try to address some of those issues because the terrain that we have here in Arkansas, when you look at the mountainous areas such as in Wichita or the Ozarks, it doesn't make financial sense to want to trench all the way up there. Trenching is an expensive process, and it could be very bad to even try to attempt something like that because the diamonds in the trenching thing is going to have to be replaced commonly. Plus, we have a lot of limestone.
That's why we said these 30 million are ready to go because they meet the current guidance. The guidance has changed. It does not include wireless. We want that to include, so we couldn't be able to include that other 115 million if we get that from the Treasury. But yeah, we agree completely.
No, I do agree with you. fixed wireless is helpful to Arkansas. And so with the governor's help in sending, the letter, we're gonna also, put something online in regards to this final guidance to try to make them see that, your rule is too tight. For areas like Arkansas, fixed wireless is the way to go, and it will get our citizens what they need. And there has been studies that have been shown that there's new technology in, fixed wireless that will meet that criteria of 100 up and 100 down. So if that is what they're looking for, that can be provided, and we can ensure that that's provided.
Thank you.
A question.
After you.
Fair. Mr. Porch, on your map where you show awards and ready to deploy as of May 26th, so that includes what you've already granted out and what the additional projects that are already in the pipeline. That will take care of those projects. And then you have an additional $150 million that you anticipate will fit in this program, correct?
Yes, we're gonna work with them to try to get them, in line with the federal guidance. Don't know exactly how much work it's gonna be, but I believe that we can get that done and work diligently to do it and provide a report if we need to.
Is that the 114 or is that the 150 million?
No, the 150 million is a soft number, but based on the criteria that we've, been receiving, fiber, of course, costs more than fixed wireless. And as I talked about, redoing your system to include an adequate backhaul, that's gonna be a large cost on that. We're talking possibly $40,000 to $50,000 per mile just to get that straight.
Okay. So once you've spent the $300 million, how much of Arkansas remains uncovered?
Well, we will first need to see what other applications we're gonna get in there. And that makes it difficult to tell exactly how much Arkansas will be uncovered. There's another factor dealing with it. We were a big, recipient of RDOF funding, about $427 million on that, which that build out is gonna be for the next up to, say, 5 years or so. So as we're doing our projects and the RDOF awardees do their projects, we're gonna see this shrink. And the best I can tell you is, in a couple of years, will be the best way I can really accurately know. Because the FCC maps are not that accurate, and so we're trying our best to make sure that we get all of Arkansas covered.
So last follow-up then, and I noticed on your number 4 point down here that you are recommending that, we engage with the company, to analyze our needs in the state. So would that happen before the additional $150 million is set up for a grant program? Are you anticipating that would come after?
Simultaneously. What we do now to make sure that the areas are covered or uncovered or unserved is we do it on a local level, get police, get superintendents involved, what's happening with the kids, what's going on there, and we try to compare it to the FCC data that we get. Once we get enough information to find out that these areas are actually not served, then we do that. We'll continue to do that while we're looking for other means, with companies to try to see if we can get boots on the ground approach to this. Because if we don't have, and I wrote this down, want to make sure that I state it, accurately. There's a certain type of, engineer that we need to be able to really get it. It's a network performance engineer, and if we can have those, working in conjunction with the ISPs, because you're gonna need the ISPs to really give them access to their system, that is really the best way we're gonna find out where the boundaries are in Arkansas and where the need is.
So why not spend the money, to address those projects that you have in the pipeline, hire a consultant to come in and really study Arkansas and make a recommendation on the best path forward that can be achieved, in the, I guess, the fastest way possible?
Here is the problem. I have, tried my best to find and get with other states and see what they're doing, part of the NGA. And The problem is everyone's using the same methodology in trying to get this thing achieved. No one's really using a boots on the ground approach. I thought there were, but there are not. I reached out to the, NGA members to see what can they give me to do this. So to find someone that'll be able to put boots on the ground, one. Two, finding ISPs that are even willing to let them into their, internet system to measure out where their borders are and how far they reach. That's gonna be another issue because we don't have, the regulations to force them to do that. That's gonna be an issue. And so we can end up sitting here waiting a long time trying to get a study done when we can do what we have done before that has proven to work and be successful for Arkansas. So I think a simultaneous approach to it will be the best approach, and that way, when I find something, because I am diligently looking, I can then present it to you all for approval. And I am looking, because I want the best for Arkansas, the same as everyone here.
I have a question.
Yes, just a second. I've got Senator Caldwell who has a question, and then I'll come to you, Representative Wardlaw, if that's okay.
I want to follow up on Secretary Hurst. I think she's right that we're almost piecemealing right here. You asked the question about how many people are not served. He didn't answer the question. The Farm Bureau is wanting to do a connectivity summit, have a preliminary meeting tomorrow, and then have the summit in August to try to address this where we can identify what do we have. You know, I mean, and I wasn't on the other committee, so I don't know what all this money's been spent on, but for me to spend, vote to spend $300 million and it's still piecemeal, seems redundant to having a master plan, so to speak. I think you're right on what you said on that. And, I would like to see us wait and defer on this until we can look to see what the master plan is or what could be developed. I don't want to stop any projects you've got going. I don't want to do that at all, but before we throw money after piecemeal jobs, we ought to see, you know, is there a real master plan out there that we could look at? So that, but anyway, preliminary meeting tomorrow, sometime in August is connectivity. Some of y'all may have been invited to it. I know the legislature has, Mike, I don't know if you have not, or Larry. But anyway, it's ongoing, it's just started, but Farm Bureau would like to put that together to obviously they're out in the rural area. I've been over here for 9 years, I still don't have broadband. I've been promised broadband every year, not by you, but I've been promised broadband every year and I still don't have it. So, you know, and again, not to reflect negatively on what you're doing because, you're doing the best you can with what you got, but I really think, I'd like to know how much of Arkansas has not been served. You asked that question, you didn't get an answer on it, but,
I would like to answer that.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last memo we did, we had an economist, we have 2 economists there at the office to do a study on it. The number that we could come out to was around 200, a little over 200 homes that were served. Due to our program, there's been 55 homes served, which equals out to about 130,000 Arkansans that got served. So if we just do the simple math on that, there's a lot of Arkansas that needs to be served.
last figure I heard one time, I think was 28% of Arkansans don't have broadband.
That doesn't surprise me.
So, anyway.
Thank you. Representative, Wardlaw, you're recognized.
So, just a quick question about the pots of money that we have. The infrastructure money, the 157 million and some change, was that not mostly identified to be used as broadband? I guess this is for the chairman.
We don't, Representative Wardlaw, we do not have any directions from the Treasury Department on that amount of money at this point in time. We expect to have them in the summer. My sense is the same as yours, that it will be for broadband and backbone sorts of things. But I don't know that yet.
Should we hold this request until we find that out, or do you guys feel comfortable moving forward? I just hate to use redundant money. I'm similar to Senator Caldwell's point, you know, just not to just throw money at it, but make sure we're putting money in places that need, you know, this upgrade.
Okay, my sense is, we have projects that are are ready to pursue today that were put on hold because there wasn't enough money from the CARES funding. And so it is the first $30 million that they're asking for, $30+ million, is to do that. And then there's another $114 million, so we also have a total of 37 ISP projects totaling $114 million that are not federally compliant. That's the part where you're trying to get the 100 both upside and downside. So I would suggest that there are projects that are ready to pursue at this time, in addition to what we're going to be doing with the other money.
Okay, thank you.
It would seem to me too that, we have these projects, we know that that they're important and they will be filling voids that are out there today. I like the idea of having a third party help us identify where needs are, because right now we're using anecdotal kind of information in a way, to a great extent, when we're asking people in the county, where don't you have services? They should know, but, it's not their area of expertise. So it'd be nice to have some organization that we could contract with that would assist us in identifying where these voids are occurring. And I personally was made aware of the Farm Bureau effort this morning, so I don't know much about it at this point in time, but that could possibly be another way or another avenue for identifying these needs out there also. Mr. Ingram?
Yes, I too have concerns about not having overall strategy and overall plan. And we refer back to the CARES Act. There are some of us that were very concerned that the CARES Act, that we didn't have a plan there either. So I don't want that to be used as that's why we should do it this way. But I would love to just see, and we've got a map here that shows grants, but I don't show where that we're being served overall across the state and the interconnectivity that would occur with these grants. Are all these grants just islands on their own, or will they attach to a larger grid that is in place? That's a real concern. The second concern that I voiced is back to a plan. We've got cities and counties and schools that are going to utilize broadband, and maybe this is just too simplistic of analogy. But for instance, cities and counties can take available of the state police on their buying cars, police cars. If any city or county in this state wants to buy them, because they might not either A, have the expertise to bid out cars and they just buy into the state's package, or B, it's cheaper for them to do that way. Do we have a plan, or shouldn't we have a plan, that if the counties or cities want to join in with the state, I've got to believe the more that we can bring in, the more efficient that we can be and drive the cost down per person. Because right now, if I look at it's about $1 million a person from what we did in our last go-around. And so those are two real concerns I have. And the last thing is, different from the CARES Act, they've given us a long fuse to do this. This is not, we don't have to do this within 10 or 12 months. I mean, we've got a number of years to get this thing right. And I worry about rushing into something real quick with this.
Go ahead.
May I
Yes.
speak? Oh,
Go ahead, Steve.
I'm sorry, Secretary.
Yes, please go ahead.
When I was speaking about the backhaul leads to the larger web. I'm sorry that the map, it can seem a little deceptive. They're not still isolated in that area. They're connected to a larger web. Maybe some like AT&T may backhaul into Windstream, or Windstream backhauls into there so they can get that, larger web. So those are just where we put new infrastructures at, but they're all connected to everyone else in the world for that matter. So I apologize for not being clear, on that on the map. I just want to show the locations where the money has been used.
But it'd be helpful if you showed the locations and how they tie into a greater picture of the overall state with what we have existing. At least it would help me.
Senator, I identified the same issue. What we have is what they've done. We don't, in the most recent, effort, it doesn't show what actually is out there throughout the state.
Right.
Which is what you're
Exactly.
thinking. Yes, sir.
Who regulates the ISPs? Is that Public Service Commission or what?
I don't think there's any state regulation for them. I don't want to say there needs to be because I don't want to get phone calls.
Well,
In the late nineties, there was a deregulation of the telecommunications industry, that was pretty extensive. And so it's pretty competitive. That's why you see, companies going into each other's territory these days.
and so that's the reason that we can't get some map of what the ISPs, where their coverage is that the reason?
That is a part of the problem. You can probably get it where there's no competition, maybe in the smaller cities, but when you get into the Little Rocks and Jonesboroughs and West Memphis, places like, and Hot Springs and places like that, there is competition, so they would be much more protective of that information, I would think. I don't know that for a fact, but I would think they would be.
Well, I mean, unless we do that, especially out in the rural areas of the counties, we're never gonna know what the coverage is unless we have a constituent out there screaming and hollering.
My hope was the third-party, view of it would help get us a better understanding of where the voids are.
And I'll agree with everybody else. I mean, we definitely need that to guide us.
Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
if I could, I'm agreeing with everyone else very much on that, but also want to go back to another point that Secretary Hurst raised, which is we need to understand the void, but we also need to understand how do we maximize the funding we have? What is the fastest way to get that access out there? Because you could end up spending money on something that wasn't the most efficient way to create quicker access, right, with another choice. And so having that sense would be helpful. And I know y'all are pursuing some of that with your concepts around wireless versus fixed, et cetera. But in prioritizing, it's who's unserved, who's underserved, and how does the money stretch the furthest? Because even though it's a lot of money, it will run out. We have a huge need.
Thank you. Secretary Bissett, please.
I agree with everything everyone said. We've been battling this digital divide in Arkansas for a very, very long time. And so I agree with the concerns of everyone. But I do have another concern. We've gotten farther in this administration in the conversation over broadband than we have since my days on the Public Service Commission. And so I think there is ample concern, or should be concern, about the $300 million. But the $30 million represents a tremendous strides that we've made in the state. And I would hate to lose that momentum by not funding those, because getting these ISPs on one accord is extremely difficult. And so while we may defer action on the $300 million, I would certainly think that the $30 million is absolutely critical so that we don't lose ground.
Chairman, I have a question. This is Representative
Kavanaugh? Please proceed.
So I just want to make sure I understand, if we were to approve this 300 million, and when we get the rules for the broadband, the 160 coming for infrastructure, and they said that we had already used that money this way through our regular funds, That's my concern, is that we'll lose that 160 million that's designated for broadband if we move too fast.
Well, I think both of them can be used for broadband. Paul Lothian, you're on the line, and you're working real closely with CTEC and Haggerty. Could you expand on that a little?
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
We're talking about the ability to use the money that is designated for, I forgot the name of the term. Capital projects.
Yes.
And its relationship to the money we're talking about here today. And is there a fear that if we use the money now, we might not be able to have access to the capital project money because we used it where it should have been used to the capital project?
Sir, I don't think that's a concern. I think that they allocated the money for the capital projects for basically three things at a very high level: broadband, water, and sewer infrastructure are the three things they talk about at this point in time, understanding the guidance won't be out for another month to month and a half. But those were the three major things that they wanted that money spent on. You obviously have to apply for it. The allocation is there for us, but we'll have to apply for that and be granted that. I don't think that the fact that we've used some of the 1.57 billion will have any bearing on the 157 million, as long as we can show the need and the benefit that the state will get from spending that money for broadband.
Okay, thank you. Representative Kavanaugh, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. The only other thing is if we spent 300 million now, and if we took the 160, so we'd spend 460 million on broadband. Is that what our goal is?
I don't think that would be the goal. That may be the result.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions? Good discussion, by the way. We've got sort of two avenues. Would you like to address?
Well, if there's no more questions, I'd like to circle back on it. Cindy, do you have a
I
question?
just had one, but I wanted to clarify one item. So the 114 million, those are project applications you have received. They are not compliant right now, but you were proposing to work with
them to get them compliant.
So if you couldn't get them compliant, it might be less than 114 million you spend there, but you would be asking to have up to the 114 million to try to get those compliant.
That's what we have in the
correctly stated?
pipeline, yes.
Okay.
So, Stephen, go ahead.
With them making the effort to become compliant, of course, since they want higher speeds, they want wires, opposed to wireless, the cost will grow from there. This is what we have now that we're working on, but that cost, I foresee that growing.
Judge Porch, none of those projects that you've identified the 114 million for are in the ground today, are they?
No.
So that you're starting from scratch on those. But you believe it's similar to the $30 million. You know they're there, but they're not compliant. So what if a proposal would be to, instead of doing 300, we did 150, which would get you the 30 and the 114 plus about $6 million at this point in time, so that you can move on projects. I'm asking this question to you two, to Secretary Preston and Judge Porter, so that you could proceed with these known projects pretty fast. Obviously, after we go through ALC and get the appropriation.
And if I could, I can answer that in just a few things that I just wanted to point out. I appreciate great feedback and great discussion. When you look at the 30 million in requests, Senator Ingram, you pointed out that number of households, 8,400, it's high. That's because that's all fiber. Those are ones that are ready to go. They fit the current definition and guidelines proposed by the federal government. The 115 million is broadening it to fixed wireless, satellite, other things that would be more conducive to Arkansas. That's what we want to see. That's why the governor is sending the letter. That's what we're hopeful. To Stephen's point, Judge Forch's point, if we don't get that feedback from the federal government, that 115 million is going to grow because all that then transforms from, fixed wireless and satellite to fiber. So that number is going to grow. So we're being fairly conservative here in this estimate, and what we're saying will be in the ground. So, 150 million ready to go. Our thought was that we've had such great interest in this program that we need to get it going again, because we have all these in the pipeline. We've had this, we've done the due diligence, we're ready to go. We just don't have the funding. We now have the mechanism by which we can fund it. If we wait again until August, and that's the first I've heard of the Farm Bureau.
I found out yesterday.
Yeah,
I sent a sample of.
I hadn't heard about that.
Asked if they could attend, so.
Yeah, and that's in August, and then they put a plan together. Are we pushing it down for, another 9 years before you get broadband service?
Senator Ingram brought out a point. I think we have 2 years to allocate this money and 4 years to spend it. So that's a real reason not to push. I'd rather be sure, again, that we have a better.
Well, and to my point is that's going to be helpful, because this is only going to get us part of the way. These costs will continue to go up, but what we were able to demonstrate last year was with $120 million, we serviced 130,000 Arkansans in less than a year's time. And this was the ones who were completely underserved, that were most impacted by the pandemic, because all of a sudden they were working from home, they were, doing education from home, they were telemedicine, all those things at home that were part of the pandemic that we now see are part of our everyday life, that we need to get this out there and deploy it as fast as we can. So by us sending the message that, yes, we have these projects that are in the pipeline, but we are going to still start taking new projects and push it down. And Senator, you bring up a great point with the counties and cities. They're going to have funds available. All the requests that come in are driven by a city or a county. That's how they partner with an ISP. So in our change of the rules, that will be something that we will address. Do you plan on using your funds to be able to do this? And it will take a lot of coordination between our office with Judge Ports, the Municipal League, and the Association of Counties to make sure we're on the same page, which I think we've done a good job. But that brings in a whole new dynamic that we didn't have on the last, and that's going to help us stretch that 300 million or whatever that number is. So, I certainly will do what the will of the committee and then what the legislature and ALC approves. This 150 would get us going in service, what's in front of us, but there's going to be a lot more out there, and I don't know how long they're going to want to wait for us to be able to start, moving the ball down the road. I think 300 million is a safe number that really gets us going again. In all honesty, yeah, we'll probably need to come back for more funds once either Farm Bureau or we have better data to know just how much further that gets us, and whether that be the additional infrastructure funds that we have directly coming in or just more funds through this committee. That'll be something that we can address at this point.
Mike, the 30 million is ready to go. I mean, we could.
Yeah.
So we're waiting on the 114 million to be approved by Treasury, correct?
Well,
Or by higher power?
either by Treasury, or we will work with them to say, how can we get you compliant? Some of it might not necessarily be, change the fiber, but there's some other issues that we can get them in compliance.
Then why couldn't we approve the 30 and then wait till you get the stuff worked out for the 114, because you can't spend it anyway?
Well, we're gonna have to do rules, and, we wanted to be able to move, quicker. If we set it down another month, then you're looking at July before we're able to get in front of an ALC again. So if we can get, guidance or information back, we want to start working on this yesterday as opposed to waiting to July or to August to push it out further. The need is out there now, is what we've seen.
Mr. Chairman?
Just a minute.
Do we have a list, or can we have a list of the applicants for this 114 million?
Do you have that?
We have it for the 30.
I don't have,
We can,
You can get it for us, though,
yeah,
right?
I can get it.
Okay. I'd just like to have a list and know where that's that money is,
You have the third in
Proposed.
front of you, you should.
That's for the 30.
that's the 30.
30, yeah, yeah.
For the
The
115,
115.
I'd like a list to see where it's going
Mm-hmm.
and kind of know that, but
Secretary Gillespie?
One of the points you made is that on the 150, not the 30 plus 114, but the other 150 million, you'd like to be able to let the ISPs and the cities and counties know that that money is going to be available,
Mhm.
so that they go ahead and start putting together applications and coming forward,
Mhm.
so we can get moving.
Well, they
Right?
still are. I mean, that's,
They
you
still
know,
are.
that,
Okay. Because part of what I was wondering, I mean, to the point you made, one of the things that we did today is I approved some rules that will come to the governor and then to the legislature and hopefully pass to make telemedicine permanent in the state.
Mhm.
When the public health, the federal, our current COVID rules manual expires at the end of this year. And we all want to move as fast as possible to get it out there. But I know, at least for me, I would also like to know that before that next tranche of additional 150 million in projects are each approved, it would be good if there had been some study, some work, so that there could be something, some third party helping to guide the decision-making in choosing among those applications. I mean, would it be possible to even merge that into this proposal, that you do the 30 that you've got, you're working to get federal approval around the 114, so that we maximize what's already there. There's 150 that's there for other projects coming, but simultaneously, as you said, we're doing that study, and we don't start awarding that second 150 until we have that better sense of our void in the state. I don't know if that's
You're just talking about the
realistic or not,
150.
but it's, yeah, the second 150, at least it allows that study to come into it and to help influence the spending of some of that money, and for us to get an understanding before we get too far along of how much is it gonna take for us to get the state where we all want it to be, which is where there's broadband access everywhere, where it's not 28%, but it's 0. Right? So that may be unrealistic, but I thought I'd throw it out there.
Any other comments or questions?
I think it's wholly realistic. I think that the variable what we have here, it's Arkansas, and it's, I think that's why the wireless piece is so critical to, preventing costs from spiraling out of control. That's always been difficulties here as we try to address the digital divide. There is no way, no real way, that we can quantify the end cost of broadband in Arkansas. There's really just no way. What we can do is best efforts and get at it. Now, I hear the concerns and the need for an opinion and a master plan. Definitely, it would be excellent. But again, I go back to the loss of momentum here. We've got tremendous momentum in this state. We've actually got people actually talking about broadband. And so I say that to say this, the waiver piece is critical, but have any of the ISPs discussed alternate forms of delivery with you in case the waiver does not come through? For example, broadband over power line. That works tremendously well in a lot of the northern states that are tremendously rural or mountainous. Has anyone brought up the concept of broadband over power lines?
No, we have not had that discussion. I think that's something that, I've heard that's been talking about, but no serious sit down, let's really discuss how this can actually work out, has been brought, to my attention. I'll be agreeable to doing any of that to best serve Arkansas. But I do, want to make sure that I'm always clear with anyone that I'm speaking to, particularly this committee. The 114 million that we get, we want to get those people up to snuff. However, if someone submits a project that is good and ready to go, and they're still working on it, I think that's the one that will need to be funded on that. Also, something to just stick in the back of your mind, when we first started with this program, we started with $4.7 million for grants. The applications flowed in like a drip, and we didn't hardly get anything. If ISPs do not see that there is money and opportunity, they're not gonna waste their time in trying to apply for anything. If we got the, 30 million, great, they say, oh, that's already designated, there's really nothing for us to do. Since we stopped doing CARES funding, it's been a drip, a painfully slow drip. The only thing that comes fast is a phone call asking, is there gonna be more money? If so, let us know, and then we'll have some projects to submit. But I've been asking them to submit projects ever since then. And if, the idea of the committee is, well, just do the 30 million, you'll never really know what's out there because the ISPs are not gonna give it to us.
Senator Collins?
I want to address Director Bassett's concern about losing momentum. If we're not headed down the right avenue, I want to lose momentum. And I don't think we need to rush forward until we can get somewhat of a master plan to understand what does the state really need. And so it doesn't bother me that we don't rush out here today or next month to spend $300 million if we don't know the overall sense of direction we want to go. And so, again, I want to go as fast as we can. I want to go efficiently as we can to be sure that we're addressing the needs that we have. I don't want to stop any of the projects we've got. So if we do something less than $300 million, I would entertain that. But I'm opposed to spending $300 million today, not really knowing what direction we're going to go. And so, I mean, we really have, I know y'all have identified some sites that need to be worked on, and we've done that. But then there again, you know, as legislators, we look at the whole state, and you know, and there may be some spots that get left out when it's all said and done. But again, we really don't know which avenue we're supposed to turn on. And so that's my opinion. And not to take away, Darrell, on what, you know, but the momentum, you know, again, to rush to spend this, to me, there's no rush there to spend it until we really identify the target.
We need to spend some. Thank you, Senator. Secretary Key.
Yeah, Secretary Preston, I'm assuming these are all last mile type projects.
Mm-hmm.
So taking a step, I mean, I agree, we need an inventory. We need to know, you know, what the assets are, with either wireline or fiber, across the state, and how these interplay. But the thing that I'm wondering is, if I'm in Brinkley, I'm one of these 950, is it really gonna matter if I've got fiber to my house if I can't afford $49.95 a month or whatever the cost is? So that's what we deal with when we're talking about school children and having access. So is that part of the equation, part of any of these considerations at this point, or are we only talking about with these funds addressing the infrastructure issue?
Yeah, these are just infrastructure. That's something where I think that the counties and cities could probably play a role in as well, is making sure that, you know, once access is out there and deployed and infrastructure is in the ground, they're helping those that are underserved to, you know, afford the cost of it. There's also some other federal programs that are not as necessarily attached to this, but were passed as part of some of the rounds of stimulus. What was that, the EBB?
That's great. Emergency Broadband Benefit
Yeah.
Program, which is out there now. It helps those qualified families that are on SNAP or reduced lunches or free lunches, $50 a month. If they qualify, if they take off their broadband service, and up to $100 for a tablet or laptop or desktop for them as well. And as far as the cost, may I address, please? That has been an ongoing concern of mine. I've been running the circuit, telling county judges and telling mayors that they have the ability to negotiate prices for those residents in that area. My thought will be, with the approval of the secretary and with the approval of the governor, is that we incorporate something in the new rules that will force the issue, that the county judge and the mayor will have to submit a letter saying that they've looked at the pricing list and that they are agreeable with the pricing list, and that ISP has to give us a copy of that pricing list. My concern is that people want broadband so bad that they don't want to run off the ISP. And so you get a product in the ground that is too much for you people to handle, and it's of no benefit. My hope is that, we'll be able to rectify that with some rule changes. And that's something that I'm looking into with the secretary, and if we get the governor's approval, of it, that'll be something that we'll hit on.
And Secretary, you make a good point too, that this is the last mile. I mean, these ISPs aren't gonna do this on their own. Right. This is gonna have to be some type of partnership, some type of grant. That's why we've been able to build out the other, 130,000 Arkansans, because they didn't have it before. They're not gonna do this on their own.
Do I understand that in order to, use 30 million, you can use existing rules, correct?
No, I would have to use, I'm sorry, my voice got that. No, I would not have to, I can't use the existing rules. I have to change the rules so it'll at least conform to what, is being requested under the federal guidelines.
And the 114 million, that would need the additional rules,
That is
rulemaking,
correct.
and additional appropriation.
Yes.
Yeah.
But on the first 30, they will be compliant, so they will be compliant with the new rules, is the way I understood it.
That is correct. We would be the ones that have to get our rules compliant. Right. They're using, optic fiber, which will be able to carry.
Okay.
Sorry, sir. I'm sorry.
Mr. Chair, I mean, I think there is a consensus for moving forward with the 150 million.
Are you making a motion to that effect?
I believe I am. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the 150 million at this meeting, and we consider the additional 150 million or more once we have a better understanding of what might be involved in retaining a consultant to help guide our broadband connectivity efforts in Arkansas.
I would second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any additional discussion? And Dr. Romero, I think you wanted to make a comment.
I did. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand the need to make less studied and considered decisions, but at the same time, we can't be mired in the process. And I speak from the microcosm of what I look at, which is healthcare. I mean, the change that has occurred over the course of this pandemic is phenomenal. Something that was not accessible to physicians that I use on a weekly basis with my patients, needs to be placed. If we want to address the issue of healthcare disparity in our state, we need to get this rolled out quickly and efficiently, but study. To delay it over years while we're putting this together is not going to benefit our public. I am clearly in favor of what you mentioned about having something in the rules that say there's got to be something from the county judges, from the mayors, negotiating a price that is equitable across the spectrum, especially for those, because this broadband is going to work for healthcare for those that are disadvantaged. And if they can't afford the $49 or whatever it is a month for this, they won't have access to healthcare, even though we have the broadband. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you.
My question goes to that right there.
Senator Ingram, please.
Judge, what power does the county judge, or is that under, or mayor, are you basing that on franchise agreements?
No,
What power do they have to negotiate a price?
well, they have to sign the agreement. If they don't sign the application or sign the ARC agreement, they don't get the money. The incentive is the money. So if they want the $5 million to build that infrastructure out there, then they're gonna have to, play ball with it.
I hope that works to that extent. Even though that cities have franchise agreements, I know of an instance of 20 houses in the most upscale residential area in Crittenden County. Their provider would not run to them. Who simply cost benefit. They would not run to them, even though they had a franchise agreement. So I hope that's the case.
Any additional discussion on this particular issue? We have a motion and a second.
Could you restate the motion, just make sure I understand?
Please.
My motion would be to move forward with 150 million to cover the $30 million projects that are already in the queue, and an additional $114,737 to cover that as well for those that, need some correction to become federally compliant. We take care of that, but then we reconvene as quickly as possible when we have more information about how we can retain a consultant to help guide our broadband efforts in Arkansas.
That's the motion.
Mr. Chair, I would like more information about who's applied for this $114 million. Before I would be willing to vote to take and have it out there.
We can provide that. This will still need to go to ALC for an appropriation. We can get that in the interim.
So, we have a motion and a second. We have a concern on the amount of information. That information can be provided to you, and it'll be done quickly.
As soon as, tomorrow.
Everybody want that information?
So, I think we have
And-
a motion and a second. that's
Is it
properly-
representatives?
Beg your pardon?
And ask the question, is everyone gonna get that information?
Yes.
Apparently, there's more people in here that would like to have that information than I.
I think that when somebody, asks for information, then I think it should be provided to the entire steering committee, and I think that should be our policy. So, any additional discussion? If not, I would ask for, all those in favor to say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion carries. And we will have that information to you, or Judge Porch will have that information to you tomorrow. And it will be, it will be ready, you'll provide the information to the DLR with regard to the appropriation and the additional information, and that will be made available and will be hopefully heard at the next ALC, which is 2 weeks from.
It'll go to peer first.
Yeah, peer and then to peer, and then, which would be the normal course.
Will the list be made publicly available as well?
I think it has to be.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The list is not proprietary in any way, is it?
Well, here's the situation. I don't want them to get their hopes up, because there's other things in the rules. Those are the ones we're gonna send out to, but we're gonna send out a letter to everyone. We don't try to single anyone out and say, look, we need everyone who's gonna submit a project to reach this. I don't want them to think that, look, I got this money coming on here, on this list, and all I need to do is just get compliance to have it, because there may be other issues.
If you provide this information to us, I don't think you have a choice. Is that right?
Yeah.
It's public information.
Yeah.
That's the law of the land.
And I'm not saying that I don't have to provide it, I'm just saying I want to be clear on the record that there's other factors in it, because there are restrictions that are in the new guidance, and I've got to make sure that they can meet all of it, not just some.
Thank you.
I'm gonna make one more comment on this topic.
Please.
And I will leave it alone.
You may make another comment, and you promised only one.
That's it. So who is the point person for, figuring out what, other states are doing, or what options we might have to retain a competent consultant on this matter? Would that be Mr. President Shop?
Could I address that just a second?
Yeah.
Because I'm going to a meeting tomorrow before we hire somebody with Farm Bureau. I don't know if they've identified anyone or not. I don't want to doubling up on the same effort.
Be nice if Judge Porch was invited.
I'm sure you'd be welcome. The Farm Bureau building tomorrow at 9:00. It's an open discussion. It's just open forum. I found that yesterday. Talking about Chairman Walker. So, at the Farm Bureau building on, 430.
At, Canis.
Canis, it's on, actually on Canis, at 9 o'clock in the morning.
They will also have, Zoom capabilities, and for somewhere in my phone, I've got the information on how you could Zoom into it if you can't be there.
And it's just an ad hoc meeting, that they're putting together to talk, to try to get organized. They have set August as the target date to have a meeting on, connectivity summit.
Let me get
I
over to
think
the
what
right
they call it.
email address
And
and
so,
I'll find it here.
Okay,
it's all in the beginning stage.
thank you.
But I wouldn't wanna,
No, it's at
Well,
Bureau.
I wouldn't want us to be doing the same thing they're doing. So,
It's already been took off.
Secretary First, with regard
But
to
I'll
your comment, what I would suggest to you, in a broader scope, in the way that we have been approaching this, will be similar to the way we did in CARES.
That'll be good.
And I mentioned this
Just tell him
last
I should
meeting.
look up at 9 o'clock.
When a project comes to us, and it's in, your purview, and you will be doing all of the due diligence required to bring it to this steering committee. There will be resources available to you. We're working with CTEC and Haggerty to extend that contract, to use them to help us with the technical side of the American Rescue Act, and to do the research to make sure that the things we're doing is in compliance, so that we're not spending money inappropriately. So they'll be helping us, your lawyers will be helping, our lawyers will be helping. So
Correct, email.
and same thing with Agri, whoever it might be, and DHS. But the burden, the main burden will be on the agency that is carrying the project and bringing it to the steering committee. Does anybody have any additional questions or issues that you would like to be addressed at this, steering committee today? I'm more than happy to discuss, otherwise. Yes?
More just a quick comment, just for the awareness of the steering committee. At the last meeting, Representative Kavanaugh had mentioned the levy funding and the needs addressed there. So Secretary Cook, who couldn't be here today, but we have met and discussed since then. So myself, Secretary Cook, and others are going to work on really forming kind of an advisory committee task force to work on that topic and that issue, and we come back to the steering committee and
Very appropriate. I appreciate you bringing that up. That's an important aspect of, the due diligence that we need to do, and those advisory committees can be invaluable. Thank you.
And another quick comment on advisory committees. I know that water and wastewater is an important topic with the funding available there. Arkansas does have a water and wastewater advisory committee, which consists of Department of Agriculture, Department of Health, Department of Energy and Environment. So we'll be working with them as well on additional recommendations.
Thank you. If there's no other business to come before this steering committee, I would entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you.
What about scheduling the next meeting?
Good meeting.
What about scheduling the next meeting?
wastewater's gonna be.
Oh, yeah.
very, very on the-